section there around cybersecurity and other issues. Next in line is Senator Lankford.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Warfel, good to see you again. We got to meet each other when you first dove into the IRS, deep into the pool, right after the Lois Lerner hole experience that happened, where the IRS was using the power of the IRS to be able to slow down or silence conservative voices on that. Obviously, there was a transition in leadership at that time, and you walked into the middle of all that to be able to clean that up. So you're walking into another set of challenges as well. Obviously, the IRS has a record amount of dollars that are being thrown at it at a very rapid time period. We're waiting to get a plan that not only we can see on how it's going to be done, but the American people can also see how that money is going to be spent. There were some very specific statements that were made early on how that money would be spent. They wouldn't affect anyone with $400,000 or less, but that actually wasn't put in the statute to require that. And so there'll be a lot of questions of how that money will actually be spent, what that looks like. ProPublica, a year and a half ago, released taxpayer returns, put them out publicly, which, by the way, is a violation of federal law to print someone's tax returns, but that apparently no one's been prosecuted for printing it and releasing it, and no one's been prosecuted for actually leaking it, and we haven't been able to get information on how it actually got leaked. So that's out there. And then there's also, you've got a record number of people eligible for retirement. So you thought you were in the fire last time. You walked in IRS, you've got a lot that's on your plate this time. Let me ask you a couple quick questions. The 1099 that Ranking Member Crapo has already brought up as well. This particular one is interesting to me. Part of the American Rescue Plan and part of rescuing America, apparently by my Democratic colleagues, was getting information about my Venmo transactions with my daughter to the IRS. So my daughter she's a great lady. Occasionally she'll run to the store and we'll buy something and we'll bring it home, and I will tell her, will you grab that at the store and I will Venmo you to pay for that. I am quite confident that will exceed $600 over the course of a year of random things like that with our family. Those records are now going to go to the IRS because of the American Rescue Plan. Part of rescuing America is getting that. The IRS was supposed to start collecting those last year and requiring third-party organizations to do it. They delayed it out and said now it'll be this year. What's your best guess on how the IRS is going to have to manage what is actually taxable in that and what is just tracking the information of me paying my daughter back for groceries in her household?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm familiar with the issue in terms of how it's been reported publicly. I think when I reflect on these issues that emerge during the filing season and the IRS then pulls back and says, we have to study this, I would imagine it's because they're getting a lot of feedback that whatever is going on right now is unsustainable. So we need to take a moment and reset. As I mentioned earlier, one of my objectives would be to prevent that from ever happening so that we're prepared going into each filing season and we mitigate the risk of that happening. But you raise a really important question about how does the IRS balance all these factors? Is it the right approach to be asking for information? I go back to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights.
Right.
Paperwork burden, intrusion. What is the right balance? And I'll start with the law. What does the law expect us to do? And then to the extent there's discretion in the law to make sure that we're taking all the right reasonable steps, I want to move there. And then I want to be transparent with the committee. This is what we think. This is the tensions that we're seeing, and we want that feedback. And if it comes to be that we see that there's opportunities for certain personal transactions to not be included, let's talk about doing that as well. So I'm open to a lot of different options. The bottom line is, as always, what will build trust with the taxpayers? Well,
I think a lot of taxpayers are going to be shocked that part of the American Rescue Plan was over the course of a year, if you do $600 in Venmo transactions, you're now going to have to report that to the IRS. I think that's going to be pretty shocking to a lot of folks in the days ahead, and there'll be a lot of technicalities and issues. This customer service issues also come up. I've seen some recent press releases and quite frankly, some crowing from the IRS about our customer service percentage numbers are so much better of answered calls and such. And so I actually went and pulled the facts on the percentage calls on it. And I have to tell you, I was a little surprised on it because the way the percentage works on it is last year there were 9.2 million people that attempted a call and only 3.7 million actually got an answer. So then the crowing was about the percentage is so much better this year. There were 5.6 million attempts to call and 3.5 million calls. We actually answered fewer calls last year than the year before. We just had fewer people try to call. So the announcement was about, gosh, we're doing so much better, the percentage is better. It's just because people didn't call anymore. We're actually returning fewer calls. So this issue, we're going to have a lot of dialogue about how to improve customer service and what that's going to look like. You don't have time to be able to go into all the details now, but just know we're going to have a lot of dialogue about this in the days ahead. So
Yes, sir.
thank you, Mr. Werfel.